Welcome, everybody. Glad you could join us tonight. Welcome to the December 2024 meeting, our last meeting of 2024 of our nonprofit plant-based nutrition organization of Wisconsin, or we like to call it PBNOW. I'm your host, Terry Lynch. The mission of our nonprofit group is to educate, inspire, and support each other on an evidence-backed, whole plant food-based nutritional path for a healthier and happier life. Our group is open to everyone, those plant-based and those just curious about it. It's meant to be a non-judgmental place to get information and inspiration and support. If you'd like more information about our group, our upcoming meeting dates, speakers, and or resources, just check out, or to check out videos of our past meetings, Google us at pbnow.org. That's pbnow.org. As we do each time, can I see a show of hands, either by raising your hand or using your thumbs up reaction icon on the bottom of your Zoom screen to show how many of you are currently following a predominantly plant-based lifestyle? Thanks, guys. Boy, a lot are popping up here. So I'd say that's probably about a third of who's on here right now. That's great. As we mentioned at the beginning of each meeting, the evidence of the benefits of plant-based nutrition in improving health and quality of life for people of all ages, as published in non-biased medical research, is quite striking. Whether it's improving health through increased energy, weight loss, preventing, slowing, stopping, and reversing problems like allergies, digestive problems, diabetes, heart disease, and early dementia, or increasing our quality of life by helping us feel better quickly, strengthening our immune system, increasing our endurance, improving athletic performance, speeding recovery from exercise, reducing joint pain, clearing thinking, or reducing the physical, emotional, and financial side effects of the illnesses, drugs, and procedures often recommended to treat the conditions plant-based nutrition can help us avoid. The research shows that our bodies do a wonderful job of healing themselves if we stop inadvertently damaging them daily with poor nutrition and start giving them the nutrition they need to heal and function optimally. It's truly remarkable. Now, let me tell you what's in store for you tonight. We'll hear from three people tonight. Our first speaker will be our PBNOW Medical Director, Dr. Joshua Lieberman, who will speak to us for about 10-15 minutes with his beneficial monthly comments. One of our attendees here tonight, I've asked to tell her personal story for 4 or 5 minutes after Dr. Lieberman. And then following Deborah, we will go to our featured speaker, Rachael Brown, author Rachael Brown, who will talk to us about how to eat plant-based and not lose your mind or your friends. And she'll also add in some plant-based holiday tips. At the end of Rachel's presentation, we should have time for Q&A. By the way, don't hesitate to pop your questions in the chat box during the presentation, so we'll try to answer as many of them as we can at the end of the presentation. Tonight's program should end about 7:30. As a reminder, we have meetings every month, usually on the second Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. Central Time. Next month, we'll be hearing from Washington, D.C.-based registered dietitian Karen Smith. I think you'll enjoy it. In the future, we'll be hearing from plant-based icon Dr. Michael Clapper, PCRM exam room podcast host Chuck Carroll, past president of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, Dr. Kate Collins, among others. We'll post more information about our upcoming meetings on our website, pbnow.org. If you register on the website or are already registered, you'll receive email reminders of our events as they approach. And last, a quick technical note. During the meeting, everyone but the speakers will be muted, and we ask you to stay that way to avoid background noise and allow everyone to hear the speakers. All right, here we go. Our first speaker tonight is a fellowship-trained cardiologist. He is president and CEO of Wisconsin Cardiology Associates. He's past president, current trustee of the Wisconsin chapter of the American College of Cardiology, and is a member of the American College of Cardiology's National Nutrition and Lifestyle Work Group, whose membership includes nationally known physicians such as Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. Neil Bernard, and Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. He is an advocate for the use of plant-based nutrition to help improve heart health, general health, and quality of life, and has seen the benefits of plant-based nutrition in both his personal life and that of his patients. We are fortunate to have him here in Milwaukee and as our PBNOW medical director. I'm happy to welcome Dr. Joshua Liberman. Dr. Liberman?
Yeah, thanks as always for the kind introduction, Terry. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Wonderful. So thanks for everyone for making it out to this for this meeting. Have not myself made the last couple meetings, so I apologize. Unfortunately, you know, life interrupts sometimes, but I'm happy to make this one, even though it feels like it's midnight out there already, which is so depressing. We're getting on towards the shortest day of the year. We're getting pretty close to it, but the good news there is that days get longer starting from then, right? So within about 9 days, we're going to get to the shortest day, and then we just start getting longer and longer and longer. So that's something at least to look forward to in the dog days of winter. So as you guys all are aware, or most of you who have been on these calls, I usually try to pick a study from the recent literature that highlights kind of the mission of what we're here for, which is to get ourselves healthier through lifestyle. And I usually try to pick a case from my own personal practice to highlight the improvements that can be obtained through plant-based nutrition. With tonight, though, I'm going to do something slightly different because we had the announcement this week of some what I think is a pretty momentous thing. Again, I'm a nutrition nerd, so I think it's pretty momentous. But I'm going to go over that in a second. And so I guess actually to save some time, maybe we won't talk necessarily about patients from the office, although, again, today in the office, we just saw several patients that were able to dramatically cut their risk factors, their markers of inflammation, bad cholesterol, but even specifically triglycerides, which are, highly sensitive to lifestyle. Had 2 patients today came with 70% improvements, decreases in their triglyceride level with moving towards healthier diets. And to be totally honest, they weren't even completely plant-based, but they were moving in the right direction. And of course, there's nothing quite like seeing the success of making half measures or quarter measures, seeing the tremendous success you can get from that to motivate you to make even more changes. In terms of research that came by, listen, every month I feel like we talk about more and more research that shows that plant-based diets, plant-based nutrition is a healthier way to be. I will say that there was a more recent research study that came out in December in one of the cardiology articles called the American Journal of Preventive Cardiology that did catch my eye. I mean, all of these things catch your eye and just give you more and more reinforcement that this is a healthier approach. But what I found most interesting about this study specifically was the size of it. So this was a review study that actually reviewed 758 individual articles over the last 20 years. And 21 systematic reviews. And a systematic review itself is usually a review of 5 or 10 or 20 articles. So this is really just an enormous kind of an undertaking to look at what all of this research shows. And what did it show? Sure enough, vegetarian, including vegan, dietary patterns were associated with reduced risk for cardiovascular disease incidence by 15% reduction. Now, maybe that doesn't sound like a lot, but again, you have to understand that that 15% matches up really nicely with a lot of the interventions that we do to try to save lives. And so a 15% reduction with changing your diet to a vegetarian pattern is actually very, very significant. Sure enough, was statistically significant. And that was compared, of course, to non-vegetarian diets. And they saw that vegan dietary patterns were associated with reductions in blood pressure, of course, in LDL, because you're not eating anything that has any cholesterol in it, in weight, or what we call in the way we look at it as BMI or body mass index, as well as markers of inflammation like C-reactive protein. So lots of benefit, not just to risk factors, but also to the end outcome that we're all looking at, that we're all worried about, which is cardiovascular events. So this is obviously lots of good news. just an enormous undertaking, showing the tremendous burden of proof that shows that vegetarian and vegan diets specifically are very healthy for heart health. But as I said, what I really want to talk about was what I thought was something pretty momentous, which is that the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee came out with its scientific report, with its official advisory guidance for the dietary guidelines for Americans. So what does this mean? So the federal government every 5 years or so convenes a committee to look at the dietary guidelines and see if any changes should be made. And you say, well, why does that matter? What good is the federal government anyway? Okay, maybe you have a point there. But the point is that these guidelines inform a lot of decision making in Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Education, school lunches. You know, it really touches on a lot of things throughout government. So and to be honest, this is where, you know, My Plate came in. This is where like the food pyramid, all these different kind of concepts came through with the dietary guidelines for Americans. So every 5 years, they convene a committee of experts. There were over a dozen national nutrition experts who spent basically the last year reviewing all the literature that's out there to come up with recommendations. Now, in the past, these recommendations have been criticized because of maybe industry's influence on them. You know, there's a lot of lobbying that happens in government, the cattle board, you know, the pork industry, you know, all these different kinds of industries, all these different lobbyists try to stick their fingers in and try to say, no, you know, you can't say this is bad. You can't say this is good. You need to, you know, this needs to be a part. Well, this year, for the first time, it really looked like the evidence ruled over everything, right? And maybe it's because of the composition of the committee. Our friend, Dr. Neil Barnard, was on the committee this year. And he is, you know, he's spoken with this group several times. He's obviously one of the world's foremost proponents and supporters of plant-based diets. And he's obviously a scientist, a physician, and an expert. And so he was involved in this. So with no further ado, I do want to talk about some of the recommendations that they made. And so I'm actually going to quote some of this stuff verbatim for you all. It's all available on the web. You can see it. But basically what happens is that this advisory committee comes up with recommendations to change. They come up with a scientific report to change the official dietary guidelines for the country. There's now a 90-day comment period where people can get, you know, can submit comments. And then at the end of that time, the actual dietary guidelines, the government either decides to incorporate these changes or not, basically. But the advisory committee this time examined evidence on the relationships of different dietary patterns and health-related dimensions, including obesity and cardiovascular disease and diabetes and all this stuff. And this is what the document says. As the committee considered the evidence, it became clear that there was a dietary pattern that was consistently related to beneficial health. And this healthy dietary pattern is higher in vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, whole grains. And they said also fish and seafood and vegetable oils higher in unsaturated fat. So yes, they're not advocating for a completely 100% plant-based diet, but this is the most that this organization has ever moved towards supporting plant-based nutrition as the focus of what we should be doing in this country, which I think is tremendous. You know, is a tremendous, huge step forward. They talk about sugar-sweetened beverages and how we should avoid them. They talk about how really the focus of our fluid intake should be water. I mean, they talk about a lot of things. They talk about saturated fat and try and decrease fat. And they even make the comment that we should be decreasing saturated fat. And importantly, they say that there's really no difference in exchanging one form of saturated fat for another, which means they're not saying it's healthier necessarily to move from red meat to chicken. They're saying there's really no evidence to say that chicken is dramatically healthier than red meat. They are saying we should be moving towards more plant-based sources of fats, i.e. unsaturated fats, particularly polyunsaturated fats, which is, again, actually explicitly stated in this advisory document, which again, I think is huge. So they come out with the comment, and I'll say it verbatim. Evidence indicates that when reducing butter, processed and unprocessed red meat, and dairy, substitution or replacement with a wide range of plant-based food sources, including plant-based protein foods, whole grains, vegetables, monounsaturated fat, and polyunsaturated rich vegetable oils and spreads, is associated with cardiovascular disease risk reduction. So it's one thing for me to tell you a study when I open this conversation, tell you about a study or all this stuff. It's one thing if the research is out there. It's a totally other thing now when we're incorporating that and accepting that and basing policy for this country off of that. Again, maybe it's just I'm a nutrition nerd, but I think that this is a huge step forward for the country. They also mention that consuming foods, and again, this is a quote, consuming foods lower in saturated fat may be related to decreased cardiovascular disease risk through their lower saturated fat content, right? As well as other nutritional exposures within these foods, such as beneficial dietary factors like fiber and antioxidants, right? Again, they're saying it's not just reducing saturated fat that matters. It's the other things that plant-based foods have. It's the fiber, it's the antioxidants, it's the phytosterols. It's all of these wonderful things. It's not just a simple fact of reducing fat. So with that, just wanted to share that wonderful news. As I said, we'll cross our fingers that all of this makes it into the final document. As I said, there's a 90-day comment period, but I think that this is really exciting stuff in the world of in our world, but also for the country as a whole.
Dr. Liberman, thanks so much. What great news that is to hear. It's been a long time coming, and I hope we keep moving in that direction. And just to follow that up, I think I'm going to ask Deborah now for 4 or 5 minutes, Deborah, if you can talk to us about your personal experience in making that change and what you found out, within, personally.
Thank you, Terry. Am I on?
Yes, you are. I can hear you.
Yes, good. Well, I'm a patient of Dr. Liberman, as he obviously knows, and as I had a short conversation with Rachael before the 6 o'clock hour, and she made a comment that was interesting. She said I kind of reversed engineered myself into this, and that's probably an accurate way to look at it. My little story is that I had about a year and a half ago, I had a very severe kidney stone issue. It was extraordinarily painful, as anybody who's had kidney stones knows, and it required visits to the emergency room and 2 surgeries and all of that. And when I was done with that, I was ready to do anything to avoid having a reoccurrence. And fortuitously, my urologist said to me after we were through this, well, here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to go on a whole food plant-based diet. And I said, fine, I will do it. I will do anything to avoid being in this situation again. I think she was rather surprised, but I was all in. But my first question was, I'm happy to do this, but I don't know how to do it. Where do I go? What do I do? And so she had given me a sheet of recommended reading, and the films, the movies on Netflix and all that. But she had mentioned Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn's the Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease Cookbook. So I started there, and quite ironically, about a month and a half later, I had decided that I wanted to reduce my medications, and my primary doctor said, that's fine, but I'd really like you to do a calcium CT scan before we take you off some of these medications. I said, sure, no problem. And of course, that calcium CT scan came back and things were not so great. So with that, I met Dr. Liberman, and I found out that I had already started down the road on the right diet, and was fortunate enough to enjoy cooking. But what I'm so interested about Rachel's book, and I complimented her on the title, because I think the hardest thing about this is convincing other people. People are so defensive about changing the way they eat, and it's habit, and it's understandable, and it seems like almost like it's a personal attack. I find it difficult. You have to really soft pedal when you talk to people, and so I think a book like this, it seems like Rachel is trying to address the subject at a level where people who aren't maybe steeped in all the facts and figures can take this on board, and with a little bit of a sense of humor, understand the benefits of it, because the benefits have been tremendous. I mean, my husband and I both started this, and we just felt better, like everybody. It's a common story. We felt better immediately. I was pretty asymptomatic as far as heart issues, but we just felt better. And to me, the exciting and fun thing has been, as I love the recipes and the food with the plant-based diet. I mean, if somebody told me I had to go back to a standard American diet at this point in time, I would really be upset, because it seems very bland, very ordinary. My husband and I were just in Turkey for 2 weeks, and being at the Grand Bazaar with all the spices and the dates and the figs and everything was just right up our alley. And yeah, there's great opportunities for cuisine that I think the American public is missing out on. And so hopefully with this new dietary guidelines, we'll start getting that way. One other little just anecdote is I only moved to the Milwaukee area about 3.5 years ago. And the local grocery store that I use, was okay as far as fresh foods, but not great, and other things. And I would search, and there's been a real change. There's had been such a change in the fresh foods, vegetables, and fruits, both in the freshness and the diversity of offerings. And I happened to meet one of the managers one day recently, and I said, "Oh, can I speak to you for a minute?" And, he was like looking at me like, "Oh no, here comes another complaint." I said, No, I just want to compliment you on. It seems to me that things have really changed in the fresh food department, and the offerings are so much more diverse and all that. And he said, "This industry is changing at light speed." He said, "I can barely keep up with the demand." And I said, "Well, and it just seems to be more, going away from the processed foods." And he said, "Absolutely, you're right." So that made me feel really good, because I felt that anecdotally I'd been noticing that in the grocery stores, that there were just so many more what I would have considered exotic foods, exotic fruits and vegetables are now just becoming commonplace. It's great.
Deborah, thanks so much. What a great story, and I hope as time goes on, you're going to feel that more and more benefits, and as you visit Dr. Lieberman and do your blood work and things like that, you see the kind of things that you want to see. I've got to ask you, and you don't have to tell me. Maybe you can pass it through Dr. Lieberman. Who is the urologist?
Oh, Carly Davis at Freighter.
Carly?
Yes.
Carly?
Carly, last name Davis, Davis, and she's a real advocate for the diet.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say Dr. Jacobson, who we've had on here.
Yes, I know. It's a friend of hers. But one of the questions she asked, I think, again, not unusual in the medical community, is the biggest stumbling block is, how do you get patients on board? I mean, well, the biggest stumbling block is the doctors understanding the benefits, and the second stumbling block is getting the patients on board. So, but hopefully that'll change.
Thank you so much. I'm just feverishly writing here. So now we're going to go on to our featured speaker tonight, who is the author, as Deborah mentioned, of For Fork's Sake, a quick guide to healing yourself and the planet through a plant-based diet. She earned a plant-based nutrition and food sustainability certificate from the T Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies at eCornell, and she's been an adjunct professor in nutrition and wellness. She's married. She and her husband live in California and have 2 grown children. She'll be talking to us tonight about how to eat plant-based and not lose your mind or your friends. Great topic. And she'll add in some plant-based holiday tips. She'll follow the presentation with Q&A if we've got time available. I'm delighted to welcome our featured speaker tonight, Rachael Brown. Rachael.
Thank you so much, Terry, for having me. And thank you, Dr. Liverman, for sharing the good news. It feels like so many years and so many people working towards this, and to see this good news kind of trickling up is such fantastic news. So yeah, thank you. And thank you, Deborah, for sharing your story too. And I want to say, in hearing your lineup, you guys are in for a treat having Dr. Clapper coming soon. I was at a conference with him in October, and I had the pleasure of getting to drive him to the airport for a little over an hour. And he's just such an amazing man. So you guys are in for a treat. First, I just want to start off by giving a little bit of background as to why would you want to listen to me. I did write this book called For Fork's Sake, and I'll get to kind of why that was, but I'm kind of an accidental author in this space. I didn't ever set out to do this. My background, I have a degree in geography from the University of Washington. Once having kids, I taught yoga and Pilates for several years. I went back and went to massage school, and I did massage for 10 years. 8 of that, I studied with a doctor in Colorado and learned a pain neutralization technique. So was helping people get out of chronic pain. And all that was going great. And then COVID happened and I couldn't see clients. And at that point, when COVID hit, we'd been eating whole food plant-based for 10 years. And so I put this picture of my family because this is 2020. My daughter is a senior in high school, and this is back in the days where they couldn't do any, we were all just at home, right? And so this is her winter formal. We dressed up and had a nice dinner at home, and we hadn't been anywhere for months. So she's actually graduating from college on Saturday. My son is a junior in college. But I want to tell you how we got here. So 14 years ago now, my nephew, who was 5 years old at the time, was diagnosed with cancer. And his mom was in nursing school. And she had a professor ask her if she'd looked at the role of nutrition in cancer. And this professor suggested she read the book, The China Study, and watch Forks Over Knives. And my sister-in-law had a small hobby farm. She had a huge veggie garden and canned and preserved and all that, but they also raised a lot of animals to eat. In fact, the summer before, she had taught me how to pull mozzarella cheese, like make our own cheese. My daughter at the time had 13 chickens. She had a little organic chicken egg business for neighbors and friends. So we were eating the standard American diet, although we were eating lots of fruits and vegetables and all of that. But when my sister-in-law read The China Study, watched Forks Over Knives, she called me and said, "Oh my gosh, you need to look into this." And they went whole food, plant-based, no oil overnight. And so I got the book and I read The China Study, and my initial reaction was I was really angry. I was so angry that nobody had ever told me this information. So when I was like early 20s, I was told I should be on a statin because I had high cholesterol. And I didn't want to be, because my dad had always been on a cholesterol medication, and I would watch him have these odd side effects, like lose his taste and have to switch medications. And so I'd say, what can I do rather than going on medication? And they would say, well, cut back on eggs and cheese and exercise more. And I exercise every day. Mountain bike, ran, rock climbed, hiked. So that didn't really make sense, but I would cut back on the eggs and cheese, but my numbers would always just creep back up. So when I read The China Study and then watched Forks Over Knives, we were pretty convinced. We thought, okay, let's give this a try. So my husband and I got our blood work done, and which is what I recommend everybody does. And we decided we'll try this for 10 days. I couldn't get back in until day 17 to get my blood drawn again. So we did it for 17 days. But when I went to see my doctor for the follow-up to read my blood work, he said, "What did you do? Because your cholesterol dropped 50 points in 17 days, and I couldn't do that with medication. So what is it that you're doing?" So when we got these results, it was like really amazing, wonderful news, but also at the same time, it was kind of bad news because, as Deborah was saying, like, how do you do this? How my kids were 6 and 8 at the time. They loved what all 6 and 8-year-old American kids love, right? Macaroni and cheese, pepperoni pizza, hamburger, all that stuff, you know? So, and 14 years ago, there wasn't as much out there. It wasn't such a buzzword. Plant-based, you know, you didn't hear that very often. So, but we did it. We started eating this way. The whole family was bought in, and we made, I would say, I think probably all the mistakes in the book, but we would share with everybody we knew about this because it was so amazing. We had so many profound health effects. So once COVID hit then, and I couldn't see my clients, I decided, you know, I'd like to go back to the T Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies Cornell course on plant-based nutrition. And so I did that. And I highly recommend that for anybody that has the time or inclination. Even if you think you will never do anything professionally with it, it's wonderful news. And it will only help to back up what you're learning in other areas. It's a really fantastic course. I finished that. And like I said, it was COVID. So we were sitting around the dinner table and my family was kind of tired of hearing about everything I was learning. So I went, yeah, I couldn't see clients. So I did their food and sustainability course, which was also equally fantastic. You learn about food systems in the world. How do we have the food that we have in our grocery stores and schools and all of that? So I finished these courses and I still couldn't see clients. And I thought, how can I try and get this information out there? And that's when I decided maybe I would try and write a book that was an easy read for people, because I kept trying to give people the China study, you know, the friends that we had, parents of our kids as friends, you know, when we'd be talking and people would sheepishly hand it back to me and say, I couldn't read it. You know, I don't really read books these days. I, you know, look at articles maybe or a blog. So I set out to write something that was really a very simple, easily digestible, pun intended, book. So let's talk a little bit. I know a lot of you are already eating this way, but for some of you who are just interested, or even if this is new to you, hopefully something in what we talk about tonight could be good information, either for you, just to help remind you of some information, or maybe for family members or friends. So I'm going to talk about going from sad to happy. And, you know, what is whole food, plant-based, no oil? It really is, I mean, whole food, plant-based, no oil. So I talk about going from sad, the standard American diet, to happy, just because PBNOW doesn't really roll off the tongue. So I went with healthy and plant-powered, yay, as the acronym. But when I talk about eating this way, I really do mean whole plant-based foods. So, you know, plant-based is a big buzzword now. You can find plant-based slapped on all kinds of foods. And sometimes it just means that there are plants in foods that are pretty offensive foods to your body. So what I mean by whole foods is foods that your grandparents would recognize, right? Whole foods like vegetables and plants and grains, all kinds of grains, nuts, legumes, seeds, mushrooms. Other way to look at it is anything without a face or a mother. So oftentimes people will say, but what do you eat? You know, and there are thousands and thousands of things we eat. So, so I'm really talking about these whole plant-based foods, and by no oil, I mean, shockingly, absolutely no oil. And this can be a hang up for people, but I go into in depth in the book about why. But for the basic reason that it's really harmful to your body, oil is, and it's 100% fat. So people will always come back, and my mother is one of them, with, but olive oil is so good for you. And so, yes, there are some things in olives that are wonderful for you. And I would say eat the whole olives, because in that package, you're getting the fiber and all the phytonutrients and antioxidants, all those things that come in that whole package. But when you're processing oil, you're taking all that good stuff out and you're just left with 100% fat, which most of us are not looking for. So, and if you are looking, there are some people who are looking to gain weight. You can add all kinds of healthy fats, whole food fats. So nuts, seeds, avocado, more soy, that kind of stuff. So nothing with a face or a mother. And I'm not talking, when I'm, like I said, just to reiterate with this whole plant-based stuff, I'm not talking about Oreos or French fries. These are vegan foods, so they don't have animal products in them, but they're not whole plant-based foods, right? So that's the kind of lifestyle and diet I'm talking about. So how do we do this? You know, this is, I go into depth in the book about this, but one of the things I ask people to consider in the beginning is think about yourself. How do you usually do things? You know, this is a big change, as Deborah was talking about. You know, to make this kind of a change takes quite a bit. But think about how you've made other changes in your life. So some people are black and white thinkers. They are all in. They hear some information and they are like, let me at it, let's go. Other people are more slow adopters, and maybe they want to learn a lot more before they make a change, or maybe they want to think about adding some things in rather than taking things away, because it makes it feel like we're depriving ourselves. So maybe some people might want to do things like add a piece of fruit to every meal, or add some greens, and slowly push out some of those other offending foods. I do suggest that people, even if you're a slow adopter, I do suggest people give it the full 10 days in the beginning, because quite a lot of magic can happen in that 10-day time period. I do suggest that people do like we did and get your blood work. And I had to put a disclaimer, a medical disclaimer at the beginning of the book, because in as little as 24 to 48 hours, you might need to reduce some of your medication. If you're on blood pressure medication, if you're taking insulin, these things can change really fast. Our bodies are trying to repair themselves. What we're doing is giving them everything they need to do it and stopping the offensive red tide, as Dr. Clapper, I'm sure, will talk about, stopping all those things that are getting in the way of our bodies doing what they want to naturally do. So in that 10 days, magic really happens. And you will start to feel really good, but there are other things that are happening that you can't feel. You know, you can't feel your cholesterol dropping. It doesn't feel any different when you have higher or lower cholesterol. So there are things that are going on that by getting those hard numbers, you can see there are significant changes going on. But you'll be noticing, like many other people have said, all these other side effects too. You might be sleeping really well. People might be stopping you going, wow, what are you doing with your skin? You're just glowing, you know, you'll have more energy than you have in forever. So there are all these benefits. The other magic that happens when you give it 10 days of cutting out any offending foods and eating whole food, plant-based, no oil, is that your taste buds literally change. Now, this is happening to everybody all the time, about every 12 to 14 days. So when you cut out those hyper palatable foods, things that are high in salt and sugar and fat, when you cut those out, your tastes literally change, and all of a sudden fresh fruit will taste so sweet. A red pepper will just blow your mind. A peach will almost be too sweet. It's incredible. But you really have to get away from these hyper palatable foods that are literally stimulating like fireworks going off in your brain when you're eating them. So it can be amazing if you really will just give it that short period of time. And then after that, you can say, okay, I'm going to give it another 10 days. And at the end of that 10 days, go for another 10 days until it becomes a lifestyle. I don't like saying the word diet, because I'm not talking about diet in the way that we usually understand it, which is something you do for a while to get a result you want and then give it up. I'm talking about making this a lifestyle, because once you experience these benefits, you likely won't want to give the benefits up. So how do you get buy-in? You know, I work with people all the time, and it can be tricky. You know, I thought I was setting out to work with parents of young kids, but it turns out I work with mostly people that are newly retired in their 60s. And I think mainly because that's when people are starting to feel the effects, have the physical effects of a life that wasn't helping their body out. So, you know, I'm talking about buy-in for people in your household, maybe a spouse or a partner or a child, but it can be for you too. If you're just, you know, by yourself, you need buy-in for yourself too. So what I suggest to get going is to make a list of your favorite meals. So I did this with our kids, and, you know, on their list when we first did this were things like tacos, lasagna, pizza, enchiladas, you know, all their favorites. So I just made a list. And I suggest you do the same, and then pick a couple of those things that you want to learn to make as a healthy option now. So these days there are fantastic, you know, Dr. McDougall puts all of his recipes, there's thousands, I think there's over 5,000 recipes on his site alone. Forks Over Knives, you can go there. They also have a ton of recipes. But if you just go to Google and type in whole food, plant-based, no oil lasagna recipe, you will get literally thousands of recipes. So read through, pick a couple, and give it a try. It might take you, you know, trying 2 or 3 different recipes to find a favorite, but I would just say give it a go. Use some of your favorite foods to get yourself going on this way. Because a lot of people think if I'm making this change, I just have to eat salads. You know, they think very plain food and it's just straight vegetables or something. And yes, it will be vegetables, but they will be delicious and they'll be used in ways that you've never used them before. Another thing I suggest is you watch some resources, and by that I mean like documentaries that are out there. Forks Over Knives is a great entryway for a lot of people. But if you have anybody who's interested in sports or athletics, The Game Changers is a fantastic movie, especially for kids, athletes of any type. What the Health, They're Trying to Kill Us. In my book, I have a whole section on resources, but you can also just Google or go to whatever platform you watch movies on. And once you put a few of these in, then you'll start getting all these different amazing documentaries that are out there. But watch one a night or one every other night. They're a fantastic way to reiterate things and to remember that you're not on this journey by yourself, that there are thousands, millions of people around the world who eat this way too. You're not alone. Another thing you can do that's really helpful is to write down your goals and your desires. Like, why are you doing this? You know, we know from different books, Atomic Habits and all that, all these habit forming things, that can be really helpful to literally write these down on paper. So what is it you're trying to do? You know, are you wanting to reduce your medication? Are you wanting more energy? Do you want to sleep better? Maybe you're looking to lose some extra weight. Maybe you're just wanting to lessen your risk of disease for down the road. So just write those things down and have them somewhere, like maybe on that pantry door that you would usually open to go to for snacks. You know, just have that taped up in there, stick it on the fridge, somewhere that will remind you when you get the nibbles at some point, or you're, you know, trying to decide, oh, am I hungry? What do I want to eat? Remember, keep those goals right in front of you. That can be super helpful. So one of my favorite quotes from Chef AJ is, if it's in your house, it's in your mouth. And isn't this true? You know, we can hide that bag of Halloween candy in the back of the pantry, but your brain is going to remember where that is on day 3 when you're, you know, feeling hungry, you know, and missing some of those hyper palatable foods. So I talk about doing the great clean out in your kitchen for this 10 days. And by clean out, I really do mean clean out, like getting rid of all the offending foods that you don't want to be eating. Just make it the easiest choice for yourself. It will be so much better. So have things that are just easy to grab. A bowl of fruit works perfect, you know, so that anytime you're hungry, you can just grab an apple or a banana or some grapes or whatever's in season, whatever you like. Just have it ready to grab. Have some veggies on hand, you know, cut some up so that they're ready to grab. So when you're hungry, you don't have to take the time. Make some hummus maybe, or an oat cheese dip or a cashew cheese dip, so that when you're hungry, there's something easy and ready for you to eat. Having starches on hand are huge as well. So same kind of thing, this goes into the batch cooking. Batch cooking is simply making more than you would normally make, right? So if you're gonna have potatoes, baked potatoes one night with maybe some black beans and a cashew cheese sauce on there, instead of making just 2 or 4 potatoes, make a whole sheet pan of potatoes. Throw some sweet potatoes on there as well. And you can cook them all up at once, stick them in the fridge and have them for a snack, to add to a meal whenever you're feeling hungry. Maybe you like brown rice, cook up a huge pot of brown rice. That makes a fantastic snack, you know, for kids after school, or if you're hungry mid-afternoon, pull out some brown rice, put it in a bowl, sprinkle a little cinnamon on there with a little soy milk warmed up. It's delicious, and it's not going to wreck your appetite. It's not going to throw you off course. You can enjoy carbohydrates. We're talking complex carbohydrates, but have some of those starches on hand. They will help fill you up. Another tip would be to keep it simple. So some people, I do advocate for cooking some of your favorite recipes, but for others, it's easier if they just pick a couple of meals and do that for 10 days. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, Dr. McDougall would advocate for keeping it really simple. So, if brown rice and black beans and salsa is something you love, eat that for 4 days or until you get tired of it. If you just want to do oatmeal every morning, that's just fine too. If you just want to do baked potatoes and broccoli and beans, whatever, that's just fine. You don't have to have some amazing elaborate dinner every night. So this goes back to kind of knowing yourself. Work with yourself. What sounds fun? Some people love finding new recipes and exploring, but you don't have to if that doesn't sound good to you. So the common concerns, on page 5, because I still get this question all the time is, and I'm sure you do too if you eat this way, is what about protein? And so there's the chart on page 5 that shows all the plant-based sources of protein. You really don't need to be worrying about protein if you're eating enough food. But as I think Deborah was saying, talking with different people, I put on different hats. And this kind of gets into the keeping your friends, right? How do you eat this way and keep your friends? I kind of channel different doctors sometimes. I think about, well, how would Dr. McDougall answer this question, which is different from how Dr. Greger would answer this question, So, with the protein thing, you're actually hurting yourself by eating too much animal protein. Protein is such a buzzword right now, and everybody thinks they need so much protein, but you will get all the protein you need by eating plants. Many people don't know that plants have protein in them. So when somebody asks, well, where do you get your protein? I kind of decide well, are they being serious? If they're serious, then I say, well, you look at elephants or, gorillas, some of the biggest animals on the planet, they don't eat meat. They're doing just fine, If they're being kind of snarky, then I will maybe say something like, oh, I don't know, I'll probably die tomorrow because I've been eating this way for 14 years now. I've never measured how much protein I'm getting and I'm doing just fine. So there's lots of different ways to answer the question, but once you look at that chart, once you figure out oh, there's actually more protein in broccoli than in steak per gram, this is crazy news. Nobody knows this stuff. So, but you really don't have to worry about protein. In fact, you don't have to worry about any individual nutrients or I love eating this way because I don't count calories, I don't count macros or micros or any of that. If you're doing this long enough, you'll need to be watching your B12. That's one supplement we take. Maybe vitamin D if you don't get enough sunshine, if you're not living in the southern part of the US. Possibly omegas if you've been doing this for a long time, algae-based omegas. But otherwise, you can get everything, literally everything you need from just eating a variety of plants. So not something that you have to worry about, even with kids. Another big concern is people say, well, I don't have the time. This is going to take too much time. And I would say, consider this like a new hobby, consider this something new. There's going to be a learning curve in the beginning. Sure, you're going to have to learn how to do some new things, maybe that batch cooking, figuring out what recipes your family likes or that you like. But in the end, it's not going to take any more time than what you've been doing. Even if you go out for meals or order meals, that requires driving somewhere and ordering food and all of that. So this will end up, I think in the end, really saving you time employing things like batch cooking, making a big pot of soup in the beginning of the week and eating off that for 5 to 7 days. So there's a lot of tricks that will make this really easy for you. Which leads to the it's too expensive thing. I mean, people will say, well, I don't live near Whole Foods, so I can't eat this way. And nothing really could be further from the truth. In fact, a study came out in the last 2 weeks saying that the vegan diet is 20% less expensive than the standard American diet, even than the Mediterranean diet, which makes sense when you think about it. If you picture your grocery cart and you take out all the meat, right? So, chicken, pork, hamburger, all of it, right? Then you take out all the dairy, which is not just milk, but we're also talking cheese and cream cheese and sour cream and cottage cheese and, butter and ice cream. I mean, all those things, right? And then you think about, well, you take out the oils. Well, those are like the most expensive things in your cart. So once you remove all those things, all of a sudden you can literally fill your grocery cart with fruits and vegetables and seeds and nuts that seemed really expensive before, raw cashews and raw macadamia nuts. All of a sudden now you can buy those things and you're still going to come out ahead. So it really is no more expensive. In fact, you will be saving money. Where people can get tripped up is they start buying packaged processed foods, and that can be expensive. Processed vegan foods, things like Beyond Burgers or that kind of stuff. But then we're not any longer talking about whole plant-based foods. We're talking about processed junk foods. So even the standard American diet, processed junk foods can be expensive. So, concerns also can be, my spouse doesn't want to eat this way. How do I eat this way around friends? I talk in the book about, we set out to be, we wanted to share this information with everybody. We were like evangelists, and then we really realized that we wanted to still have friends. So we needed to take a different route. But, there's different things you can do. One is you can tell everybody about it. You can be that person that at the potluck brings something to share. My big tip here would be to bring more than you think, because oftentimes we brought something to share, and then by the time we get to it, it's gone because everybody wants to try this, lasagna that they didn't know was whole food plant-based. Or you can do like Dr. Doug Lisle. I don't know if you've watched his talks. Fantastic. The Pleasure Trap. If you look him up, he gives a fantastic talk, and he will often just say, you don't have to say anything. Like just live your life. And if people are asking questions, that can be a great tactic too. So it can be dependent on where you are in your journey and who that you're talking to. But we found that our friends, when they knew we were doing this, and we were doing this for health reasons, the other reason when we made changes, my cholesterol didn't drop in as low as it probably should have. So we did some further testing, and my grandfather had Alzheimer's. My dad now has Alzheimer's. I carry the Alzheimer's gene. My son carries it as well. So we had, history of pancreatic cancer in our family, heart disease, so this really was something that was for our health. This wasn't something that we were just jumping on to try out for a little while. And once people understood that, they were very understanding. We decided early on, if somebody invited us over to their house, we would eat whatever they served us. We weren't going to turn up our nose at something that somebody had prepared for us. But we found that our friends were so kind. Once they knew we were serious about this, they would say, they'd call ahead of time and say, well, what can I make you? Do you have a recipe? Or I'd like to make this, but can you tell me how to make it? So many of our friends have become whole food plant-based just over the years because they tried things that we brought, or they tried things for us when we were coming over, or we invited them over and they found the food to be delicious. So even though it can be intimidating to have these conversations, feel it out and see if people are really interested in knowing why you're making this change, or maybe they're not. And then just do what you're doing. With all this information that you're learning, you will know why you're doing what you're doing, and it won't be as tempting to throw in the towel or have something that you wouldn't usually have. And that comes across over time with others. Even the holidays, I will say, if you think about Thanksgiving, if you just had Thanksgiving, most of the food at Thanksgiving is plant-based food. A lot of it, we have added a lot of, cream and butter and all that too, but we have a fantastic Thanksgiving that doesn't involve anything with a face or a mother, because it turns out you can make, mashed potatoes without cream or butter, and you can make all the sides. We make an amazing stuffing recipe that uses soy curls instead of sausage. I made a kind of a turkey looking thing this year that it was shaped like a turkey. It used tofu and breadcrumbs, and you covered it with rice paper. So it was like the shape of a turkey breast, and then you could cut it, you'd use it for sandwiches after. So you can get really creative, or you can just find really simple recipes. You don't have to have green bean casseroles. You can just have green beans on the side, so you can take a lot of your favorite recipes from, grandma's dessert that she made, you can likely find a version of that or remake a version of that. If you go to my website and put in your email, I have a guide that is how to cook and bake without oil. So you can print it out and stick it in your kitchen, and you can do things like just swap out that butter or oil with applesauce. You can swap flax seeds or chia for eggs, and you can make many of your favorite recipes just by making a few simple substitutions. So you will not starve during the holidays. You will really actually still enjoy them, and probably even more, because another great thing about this, I have a chart in the book about calorie density. And once you understand calorie density, you know, if you used to eat 2 pieces of pizza because you needed that to be full, if you're eating whole food, plant-based, no oil pizza, you might need 4 pieces of pizza, or, you know, a big salad and 2 bowls of soup. But that's because there's a lot less calories in the food we're eating. So you might need more quantity. And sometimes in the beginning, people get a little nervous, like, I'm eating so much food. And then they realize any excess weight is just coming off effortlessly. You can eat to satiety. So you can eat all this food until you're full. Your body will start to recognize and get used to a different feeling, because we're not shoving, you know, really calorie dense food into our stomachs. So some easy wins, how to make this easy. Like I mentioned before, something like adding greens. You know, you can get the big bag at Costco, or some of those clamshell things, you know, or hopefully you have a garden, not this time of year, that you can pull from, but any greens, you know, spinach, kale, chard, dandelion greens, all these things, you know, go wild with trying all these different greens. But per Dr. Esselstyn's work, you know, maybe you don't need to try and do it 5 times a day, but the more greens you get, the better you're going to be doing for your body. So you can do things like add them to pasta. Whenever you're cooking your pasta, the last 30 seconds, toss handfuls of greens in there. Then when you drain your pasta, those greens have just been cooked, and add whatever sauce you were going to add normally. But that's an easy way to get them in. You can chop up greens and toss them into soups. You can chop up greens really tiny and toss them into hash browns. Makes a wonderful breakfast. Or a tofu scramble. I've got a recipe on my website for that. You can easily toss them into smoothies. My son didn't like anything green when he was young, and so we made some smoothies. We often made smoothies, but he didn't like them green. So if I tossed in some smoothies, I would toss in blueberries, and then it was kind of a purplish brown, but for some reason that was better to him than green. You can even toss greens into oatmeal. Ann Esselstyn does a savory oatmeal in the morning with mushrooms and greens, and it's fantastic. My daughter was more of a savory person, so we would do that in the morning. So, you know, pick something easy that you can just toss in for maybe for a couple of weeks. Try the greens, or try fruit. Try eating more fruit. You know, 97% of Americans are not eating enough fruits and vegetables. We're not getting enough fiber. So an easy way to do this is just to have these things on hand and use them as a snack, or something you have before a meal, or something you have as a dessert even. I don't know if you've taken grapes and frozen them and then have them as a snack. That's a tasty dessert. Another easy win is, and I have to say this is Rip Ethelstyn's Cut the Crap. And the crap stands for calorie rich and processed foods. So these are those snack kind of foods, or foods that come in a package that you really want to be staying away from. There have been studies that have found that a highly processed vegan diet is just as bad, if not worse, than the standard American diet. So a lot of these manufacturers are, yes, making foods that are plant-based, but they're adding a whole lot of coconut oils and other things. You know, we're talking about things like Beyond Burgers, any kind of snack foods, cheeses, that kind of stuff. You can find things. You just have to read labels very carefully when you go to the grocery store, when you're looking at processed foods. And I go with Dr. Greger's version of processed, by which I mean you want food like for instance, we eat soy curls, which are dehydrated soy. So that is a processed food, but nothing has been taken away and nothing has been added to it. So that's what you want to look for. It's not that you can't eat anything that comes in a bag or a box, but you just want to make sure there have not been things added or taken away. The one I would say an exception for us is PB2 powder. I don't know if anybody's heard about that, but if you're looking to lose excess weight, or our bodies, our numbers change really fast if we eat a lot of nuts. So PB2 powder is peanut butter that has been defatted. It's like got 93% of the fat taken out of it. So you can use this powder. Tastes like peanuts. When you add water, tastes like peanut butter. So you can make sauces and that kind of stuff out of it. So I have a website you can go to for forksakebook.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, all for Fork's Sake Book. So you can find me on those places. If you want to go to my website and put in your email, I send a weekly newsletter that's really short and sweet. It's a tip or introducing you to something that I learned about, someone I want you to know about, or giving you a recipe. So you can sign up there. Like I mentioned, if you sign up, then you get that guide for cooking and baking without oil that you can print out and stick up somewhere. I also do one-on-one consultations for people who are looking for some support in their transition to going from sad to happy. This isn't anything I set out to do, but people were asking for it. And it's been a real joy to get to journey with people. So we just meet on Zoom, and we can figure out what's tripping you up. Or sometimes people did this a while back and they go, oh, I fell off the wagon. So we kind of parse out and figure out what was not working and make this a really easy and sustainable lifestyle. So I will say that 50% of the profits from a book I donate to charity, and 1% of gross sales from the book sales go to 1% for the planet. This really is my best effort at helping people and the planet. So you can find my book anywhere you get books. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I have books in local bookstores in California, but you can order it wherever. So I think we have plenty of time for question and answers, which I find is really the magic, actually. So I hope people will jump out with some questions.
Well, Rachel, thanks so much. That's so much practical advice, and so many of the things that you normally don't hear. This kind of the social aspects of all this, as well as how do you do it.
Yeah, and I did. One thing I was going to say too, this, like, your group is such a fantastic example of what is so helpful in eating this way, is finding your tribe, finding your group of people. And Whole Communities is another free resource. That's Colin Campbell. If you look up nutrition studies, Whole Communities, anybody can join that. They also do events and that kind of stuff. But if you don't have any groups near you, we have these amazing Zoom now is such a wonderful thing, but there are many places that have vegan meetups or pods that you can join. So it's really helpful, just what you're doing.
Thanks. And I would take that and answering one of the questions that was in there about trying to find a plant-based doctor here locally. I hope to do this in the future. Everybody is to find a number of people, put their names up in our resources page, so that it makes it that much easier for people to have a primary care physician or a specialist for that matter, like Dr. Liberman, Dr. Amy Welsh, who's been on here before, Dr. Jacobson, a urologist. I mean, there are a number of people out there that are doing this. But if somebody has not or is looking for somebody, as Rachel mentioned, Zoom is great. There's a group, I think it's Love.Life.
Yes.
That it was co-started with Mackie, who from Whole Foods. This is kind of a new thing that he's gotten involved with, that had been started up by Dr. I'm not sure if you remember, Rachel, Dr. from Colorado.
Lori Marbus.
You got it, Lori Marbus.
Yes.
And so if you go to Love.Life, if you can't find somebody locally, then you probably always want to have a local primary care physician. But to supplement that, you can go online and Zoom with these doctors. I know that there's at least one in the Love.Life who can do telemedicine in Wisconsin. So and there are some others beginning to pop up, but hopefully, much as Deborah mentioned, having all this produce and this healthy food beginning to show up in the stores, hopefully we're going to start seeing more and more physicians that are picking up these disciplines and realizing what a wonderful thing it is. And the additional hope is that the healthcare systems will embrace them. Now, Doctor, I know that one of the doctors we've had on here, well, a couple of the doctors did a lot of work trying to get a lifestyle medicine clinic set up within Fredert, and got the funding for it, and somehow it got killed before it reached fruition. So there, it is a lifestyle medicine and a whole food plant-based lifestyle to a administrator within a healthcare system is not a good business model. You're healing your clients. You don't end up with business.
And I would, can I just interrupt you for a minute? I would say Dr. Clapper will probably speak on this because this is exactly what he's doing in Canada, trying to make this a workable model.
Moving medicine forward.
Yeah. And I would say it's such a wonderful thing, and it would be amazing, but don't let it stop you from eating this way. My physician, who was a lifestyle medicine certified doctor, retired, and I was unable to find anybody nearby. So my doctor now is not a plant-based doctor, but I have all these other resources and all these other doctors where I get information from. So for my regular lab work, which he can never understand, like, why are you doing labs again? We're like, well, we want to track and see, what's changed. But you don't have to have a plant-based doctor, but it's a fantastic thing. And if you can afford it, I want to be, it's like organic food. I want to be giving my money to help these things continue and be supporting these things that we want to see, but it's not always necessary. Can I answer one question that I saw somebody ask about Beyond Burgers? Because I didn't do a good job of explaining this. Somebody said, I can't find it again, but they're new and miss burgers, and what's wrong with Beyond Burgers? So I would say, if you're going to eat a burger, I would rather you eat a Beyond Burger than a meat burger. I will say that. But my issue with some of these processed foods is that some people will transition to Beyond Burger, but then they will never leave a Beyond Burger to make a black bean burger at home, or a quinoa burger, a millet burger, a beet burger. There's these fantastic recipes that you can make a burger that doesn't have any additional fat added into it, and not additional emulsifiers, these things that you don't need and that are not good for your body. So, if you're at a restaurant and there's nothing else to eat, then and they have a Beyond Burger, sure, Beyond Burger is going to be better than having a steak. But I prefer that people use them as a transition food and eventually move to eating more healthy food. So there's just better options out there. So I don't want to say never eat some of these foods, because for some people, if you miss a Beyond Burger, the first one I had, I said, I think that you made a mistake because it looks like this is a real burger. And they said, no, we get that all the time. This is actually a Beyond Burger. So they are very close if you're missing a burger.
And I think, and you probably mentioned this, I was writing something down while you answered that question, but if you look at the nutritional information, the fat content is almost identical to hamburger.
Yeah.
So it's the plant in there is largely pea protein, I think, or something like that.
Right. And that's what I was going to say about the processed foods. So like, we eat soy. Soy is not bad for you. Don't believe any of the hype there. Our bodies deal with soy, the estrogen that's in soy, different than they do from, other kinds of estrogen. So, you can have a lot of soy products. Maybe don't drink a gallon of soy milk every day, but I don't know anybody who does that. So, but we don't, like the process, we don't eat soy protein isolate, right? Because that's soy that's been highly processed. It's like dried in a chemical process to get protein out of it to add back into things. So that's like you're talking about the burgers, all these things that are added back in to make something like a food. Just use real food and look up a whole food plant-based no oil burger recipe. You'll have thousands to try, and they will be absolutely delicious with no ill side effects. They'll only be good for you.
There's another question for you. Carla says, I've recently been diagnosed with osteoporosis. I'm concerned about going whole food plant-based food because I read that you can't absorb much calcium from greens, right? If I gave up yogurt, cottage cheese, etc. So is that something?
So I would say many of the foods when you're eating, and I'm not a doctor, so I will preface that with this, but you can get all the calcium you need from eating whole plant-based foods. And once you stop eating acid-forming foods, your body will not be trying to suck calcium out of your bones. You'll be giving your body everything you need. So, so when you're eating a more alkaline diet, when you're not putting your body in a state of inflammation, your body doesn't pull calcium to take care of things. So the more greens you can eat. I mean, like that Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease book from Esselstyn, he will give you all the information you need on why, and it's more from heart health and your endothelial cells and all of that, what the greens do. But greens are a fantastic thing. But you can also get calcium in other sources. You know, you can have fortified soy milk, you can eat beans, you can get calcium from a lot of other things as well.
That's where the animals that produce milk are getting the calcium from the plants in the first place.
Right.
And you might, and I would think that, let's see, Carla, if you went to YouTube and typed in Dr. Greger or nutritionfacts.org and then put calcium, there are probably a few videos by Dr. Greger, who does excellent work looking at medical studies and then putting them in kind of layperson's language while he shows what the medical studies are. He puts them up there. And I've got to think that Dr. Greger addressed this to make you feel very comfortable that you can get the calcium you need going plant-based. And of course,
yeah, I think
exercise.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think he has a whole series on it. So there'll be videos and blogs you can read. So yep, that's an excellent source.
And then Nan says lifestyle medicine in the community is so needed. I would even volunteer my time as a nurse to help. And I totally agree. And we will be having more lifestyle medicine physicians speaking. And if we can find some locally, we will. But as I mentioned, a prior president of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine will be speaking. And I've got a couple other people that I will be trying to get a hold of who can speak to that. But we are beginning to see people pop up here and there that are lifestyle medicine certified physicians that were primary care physicians.
Yeah, and I was going to say, Nan, I'm with an organization, work with an organization called Eat for the Earth. If you look them up online, they have adopted the model that Nelson Campbell, one of T Colin Campbell's sons, started, the Plant Pure Pods. So we realized we did some for people in our community, but really who needed this was farm workers. And so we now have Salud en tu plato, which is the whole program in Spanish. But we have a lot of nurses, retired and otherwise, who volunteer because we basically walk people through a 2-week program. We meet with them, they do a biometric screening, and that's mainly what we need the nurses for. And then there's presentations, they get like a daily email, and this is all free. So you can get this information. If you look up Eat for the Earth, you could talk to the director there, and it might be something that you could offer in your community. It's a fantastic program.
Yeah, and make sure you keep in touch with us here to let us know what you're doing. If you do pursue that, I'd certainly appreciate hearing about it, and maybe having you on for 5 minutes someday to talk about it. Let's see. Jennifer says quinoa sweet potato burgers are amazing. Baked in ovens, so super easy too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Burgers. So I love burgers. I don't like hamburgers at all. I like the smell of burgers, like cooking, like barbecue just smells good to me. But you couldn't make me eat a regular burger. You know, really, when people say they like burgers, for the most part, what they like is all the fixings on it. You know, so even if it's just a plain, I say plain, the recipe that I started out with was like something that somebody had made in a hotel room when they were traveling, and all they had was a packet of plain oatmeal, they had a can of black beans, and they had some packets of mustard and ketchup. And they mashed that all together and made like a basic bean or a basic burger. And that's what I started with. And I would just start adding spices. And then if I had a pepper, I'd chop it up really fine and add that in. And then it just became this whole thing of adding all different stuff in. But you can find these amazing recipes for burgers that are out there that are just delicious.
And what you're talking about, Rachel, with the black beans and the oatmeal, that's a kind of burger that doesn't fall apart easily. I mean, the
Right.
black beans really are kind of the glue.
Yeah.
And real substance there. So yeah, there are a number of great recipes out there.
Yeah, I was going to say too, when we were talking about the cost of things and not needing to be near a Whole Foods. I don't know if you are familiar with registered dietitian Jeff Novick. He does a lot of stuff. He's a great one to look up on online as well. But you know, he talks about that even if somebody just had a dollar store nearby, they could eat this way because a dollar store always has a grain, usually a rice in a bag. They always have beans, you know, lentils often or beans in a bag. And then you can find vegetables if there's a freezer section or canned, you know, like you could eat from a dollar store and eat whole food, plant-based, no oil. So it really doesn't have to be difficult. He allowed me to put his recipe for longevity soup in my book, which he came up with for, I believe his daughter was 10 years old and he was a single parent. He needed something that she could make for dinner. And he famously says, all you need is a can opener, a pair of scissors, one pot and a stove. And it's a super simple soup, but you can make a huge batch of it and eat off it. He talks about don't add any seasonings. And each time you pull this soup out, you can add whatever seasonings you want. So if you're feeling like, you know, a Mexican soup, you can add some cumin and, you know, paprika. And if you're feeling like an Italian soup, you can add Italian seasoning blends. So there's some really simple, easy tricks to keep it easy and healthy and delightful for your taste buds.
That's excellent. Dr. Liberman mentioned that Dr. Shahira Kader is a good primary care physician in the Tulsa area. That's great. Thanks, Dr. Liberman. Let's see. Any advice? So SR asked any advice on what blood test to ask for to accurately test my B12 level. I'm not sure if Dr. Liberman is still on, but.
Right, he would be the one probably to answer in medical speak what you would want to ask for.
Yeah, I have written in the, oh, go ahead.
No, I am here. I am not aware that there's any special test that needs to be done a special way, but you can just order a vitamin B12 assay. I'm not aware that that's not accurate or anything like that. So it's a pretty routine test that any lab should be able to do.
And I just had my annual physical and I asked them to test for B12. And they did. And
yeah, so
came back, you know, I was right in the middle of where you're supposed to be.
I mean, there's for things like, say, you want to check a magnesium level, the routine way magnesium is drawn is probably not representative of true magnesium levels in the body. And so you want to order something called a red blood cell magnesium level. And so for different tests, sometimes there is a specialized way of doing it, but I'm not aware of any specialized way that you need to do for B12.
Thanks, Dr. Lumra. Any other questions? And if anybody has a question that's not big on typing, don't hesitate to hit that icon down on your Zoom screen where you raise the hand. And then I think you would pop up and then we could unmute you to ask a question.
I saw too, somebody mentioned that the PB2 powder, now they do make a version without salt and sugar too. So for people who are SOS, salt, oil, sugar free completely, you can use PB2 powder too. I will say we go kind of the route of Dr. McDougall in that I use whole plant forms of sugar. So by that, I mean like dates or maple syrup. We don't use white refined sugar. But we are athletes. We, you know, do 4-hour bike rides and, you know, hour plus long trail runs and that kind of thing. So salt, we I don't cook with salt, but if we sit down at the table and we want a little salt, we will put some on right before we eat, but we don't add a lot of salt. And I did a stint at True North in May, and I was convinced that I need even less salt. Like no salt is really great if you're not working out. I mean, it's just better for your body, but I'm not strictly salt and sugar free. We still use some of those things, but for some people who have more like addictive eating patterns with certain foods, you know, if sugar is a trigger and makes you want to eat a whole bunch of food you shouldn't eat, then definitely, you know, be giving that up, and maybe, you know, lessening the even date sweetened foods that you make or whatever might be helpful. But I advocate actually for eating desserts. I usually, when working with people, I'd be like, please add desserts back in so that you don't feel deprived. But I'm not talking about Oreo cookie desserts. I'm talking about ginger snaps you make at home, you know, or like for Thanksgiving, we made a pumpkin pie that was made out of real pumpkin out of a can, and had tofu in it, had all these amazing spices. The crust was made out of oats and raw nuts. So it was delicious, but it was also so nutritious. So I'm an advocate for making healthy desserts that you can have as snacks so you don't feel like you're missing out, and you can make really healthy desserts. You know, we make a cookie that can double as breakfast or a snack or a dessert because it's oats and some other things in it, but it's delicious. So.
Excellent. Now I've got to ask, let me just take a quick look here. If either of you have off the top of your head or might be able to send me the name of the nursing professor who talked to your sister, who recommended.
I need to ask her because you're not the first person to ask me that. I know. I feel like we're so indebted to this professor.
And that was a few years ago, right?
Yeah, it was 14 years ago. Yes, and I failed to mention my nephew, who was 5 at the time, is now a thriving 19-year-old.
Oh,
so yeah,
excellent.
healthy and happy. Yeah.
Let's see. Christine talks about, let me just pull this up. Healthier frozen brand is actual veggies, super greens, or black bean flavors, available at Whole Foods. Thanks, Christine.
Yeah, nice.
Take a picture of that. So next time I go to Whole Foods, and just as an aside, I'd mention I had to Whole Foods to get kava hummus. So if you're looking for hummus that doesn't have oil in it, kava, C-A-V-A, I like the taste of it. Some do, some don't, but I eat it. I've got to say every day. You know, you put it on tortillas, you can put it on toast, you can put it on. I'll take a spoon and just scoop it out. I like it that much.
Yeah. And hummus is one of those things we had to search long and hard too. There's only 2 stores where we are that we can find it. And one of them, it's like a sometimes thing. But if you have a regular old blender, you can make your own hummus. It will take you less than 10 minutes. Fresh lemon juice will make it really pop. The Anne and Jean Esselstyn or Rip Esselstyn, if you look up a recipe, they have varieties of recipes. So we make a dill pickle hummus that we love. That's probably our favorite. But you can make all different flavors or just a really simple hummus. And like you said, we eat it all the time in so many different ways. And it's so good for you and easy to make without the oil.
And if you're looking for desserts, as Rachel was talking about, Anne and Jane Esselstyn, knock those dead. And you know, if you want to see them do that, they have a bunch of videos, or you can go to our last meeting where they made a couple holiday appetizers and a couple holiday desserts. So
I believe they even have a chocolate hummus. I haven't made it, but I'm pretty sure they have a chocolate hummus. I'm pretty sure it's them. Sounds interesting.
Susan says, I love making homemade hummus, and it's so easy to make.
Yeah,
that's the truth. Let's see, anybody else? Or about
Bethany.
23, so we've got a few minutes left if anybody wants to.
I see Bethany raised her hand.
Bethany, okay. Where is Bethany? Why don't you? Oh, there we go. I'm trying to.
I just wanted to know, thank you for all the information. I just wanted to know what the cookie was that you mentioned Rachel, that you could have for breakfast or dessert. And I also wanted the quinoa and sweet potato burger recipe that someone mentioned.
Yeah, and I will say I'm not even talking about a specific. So this is the thing. I know I am not a baker. Like if we had to make a cake for something, my husband would have to make it because I'm not the person that does like a level measure everything. So when I'm saying those cookies, it's just what I toss together. So that's what I love about once you start working with using real whole food to make things. So I just use rolled oats. I will toss in some applesauce. I'll make some flax egg or chia, either one, which you mix with hot water and stir it and let it sit and becomes really gummy, right? I'll add spices like, cinnamon, maybe cardamom. I'll add some vanilla, maybe some non-dairy chocolate chips or some dried fruit. And I will just be mixing that until it's like a consistency that will stick together. And then I just put it on a Silpat mat or parchment paper, drop clumps of it, bake it for 10 to 12 minutes. And that's what I have. So I'm not even using a recipe, but you'll be able to find Anne and Jane have amazing recipes out there for desserts. But don't be afraid to just mess around with what you like too. You can also use mashed bananas, the same thing. And sometimes these things come about because I have like some leftover oatmeal or I have one ripe banana. I was like, oh, well, I'll make some cookies, just toss it all together. So.
Thank you.
Jennifer Mertens, Jennifer on the chat mentioned, found it. It's in a book I have by Phoebe Lapine. Recipe is titled Sweet Potato Quinoa Burgers with Sprouts and Spicy Lime Aioli. And then Susan Jordan mentioned 3/4 cup flour, and then added the rest, added more.
Oh, nice. Cookie recipe.
Whoops, not flour, oat flour. Yeah, and I've got to believe if you go online and type into YouTube or something like that, plant-based cookies and a few ingredients, you probably even find somebody not only telling you what the ingredients are, but actually doing it. And
Brittany Giroudi. Yeah, Giroudi family. She made Starbucks has these cranberry bliss bars. I don't know if you've seen them, but I hadn't even seen them in Starbucks. I saw her recipe first. I made them and then saw them in Starbucks. But it's like a healthy version of these beautiful little bars. They look like scones kind of that would work perfect for like a holiday treat or, a Christmas morning kind of treat. So I found it on it was in the NHA magazine. But I posted pictures of it and somebody said, where'd you get this? And I just said, Giroudi family. And somebody messaged back and said they were able to find it off the NHA website. But that's a tasty Christmas treat. And it's got dried cranberries on top. So it looks very festive and it's got a date frosting that's delicious. And when you make it, there's leftover frosting. So you can frost those breakfast cookies or put it on toast or put it on a potato, even a sweet potato. It's really good.
I don't know if anybody's gotten I think it's the Whole Food, or I'm sorry, the Forks Over Knives. Forks Over Knives comes out with the quarterly magazines, and they have just delicious looking pictures in there. One page after another, and then with a note saying what page the recipe's on. So there are wonderful things in there as well. But there's just, as you've mentioned, Rachel, there are thousands of recipes out there. And,
yeah.
And as you also mentioned, find the things that you like to eat, and you're gonna. Chances are that one of these recipes is gonna work for you.
Yeah. Forks Over Knives is an excellent resource, and I've had recipes in their magazines. Their website, they keep a log of all of those. So, and they have a very strict, they regulate how much sweetener and how much salt can go. So that you're getting a very healthy, whole food, plant-based, no oil recipe when you go to their site. So that's a fantastic place to find recipes.
So Rachel, thank you so much. This has been outstanding and fun, which is much more enjoyable. And just for everybody, as a quick reminder, our next monthly meeting will be Thursday, January 9th at 6 o'clock Central Time. when our featured speaker will be Washington, DC-based registered dietitian Karen Smith. If you'd like to receive notice of this and other upcoming PBNOW events and are not currently on our list, Google us at PBNOW, or you can subscribe and receive email notice of our upcoming events. And remember too, that if you'd like to check out parts of this meeting or some of our past meetings, go to the video library section of our website, or even easier, just go to YouTube, type in PBNOW, and you can go back and watch entire talks or skim through the parts of each presentation that may be of particular interest to you. And this meeting should probably be up in a week and a half, I imagine. Thanks again to Dr. Joshua Lieberman and our featured speaker, author Rachael Brown, for sharing your valuable time and knowledge with us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Good night, and hope to see you next time.